The galaxy had grown quiet in its own rhythm. For thousands of years, countless species ruled the stars. They built empires, traded across light years, and fought wars that shifted borders but never changed the balance of power. Humanity was never part of that balance. For more than 20,000 years, their name had not been spoken outside of whispers. They were gone, erased by history itself, their legacy fading into myth. No records were complete, no answers were clear. It was said that humans had once risen quickly, faster than any other species. But they burned out and vanished before the galaxy truly understood them. Many thought of them as a legend, an echo without form, something not worth remembering. That silence was comfortable, until the day the silence ended. It began at the edge of the Perseid Void, a place where few dared to travel. Alien listening stations picked up a signal so faint it was nearly dismissed as background noise. But the pattern repeated, steady, purposeful. An old station keeper with too many years of experience recognized it as an engine signature. The station's sensors focused, and the truth came alive on the screen. A single vessel drifted from the dark, its hull scarred, its surface layered with metal the sensors could not identify. It was not alive, yet it moved with intent, and stamped into its side were markings that should not exist, symbols pulled from archives so old they had turned to dust. Human letters. The alarm spread faster than light. Fleets were alerted, councils summoned, and scholars pulled from their hidden libraries. The news was impossible. A human ship had appeared, drifting silently across the stars but alive with power. No crew answered hails. No signal returned. The vessel ignored every message, every warning, and every weapon lock. Yet it moved forward unbothered, as if the galaxy itself no longer mattered to it. The Council of Species gathered in a massive chamber orbiting a neutral star. Representatives of 38 worlds filled the space, their voices sharp with fear. They argued over what it meant. Some demanded immediate destruction. Others whispered that to fire on it would be suicide. Many were old enough to remember fragments of stories, legends passed down from ancestors who had lived during the last age of humanity. They spoke of wars that ended in days, of weapons that could blind sons, of soldiers who fought without fear. Humanity had been both admired and feared. And now, after 20,000 years of silence, they had returned, or at least their shadow had. The ship drifted into system after system, its silent passage more frightening than any fleet. Warships shadowed it, careful not to provoke. Their weapons locked, but not a single commander dared to fire. Some tried to block its path, but their engines died as it approached, their systems frozen until the ship passed. When it moved on, power returned as if nothing had happened. Crews whispered of ghosts, of curses, of a vessel that carried not life but death itself. The name spread across comm channels, whispered in every station, every fleet, every colony. The ghost ship. Among the young races, panic spread. Colonies demanded evacuation. Traders refused to pass near the sectors it traveled. The galaxy, once sure of its peace, trembled under the weight of something it did not understand. Yet the oldest races stayed silent. They remembered more than they admitted. Deep in their archives, sealed records spoke of humanity's last war, a conflict so violent that the galaxy itself trembled. Some claimed humanity destroyed itself to deny victory to an enemy no one remembered. Others believed they had left willingly, traveling beyond the rim of known space. None of those theories prepared them for the sight of a ship returning without warning, without explanation. Inside the ghost ship, faint lights flickered across its broken hull. Shadows moved, or perhaps they only seemed to. No one could tell if there was a crew, if there were machines, or if the ship itself was alive. Scanners failed to penetrate its walls. Every attempt ended with static and broken readings. Some swore they saw faces in the metal, shapes like eyes and hands pressing against the inside, but no proof ever held. To those watching, it was as if the ship itself was a coffin carrying secrets buried longer than empires had stood. As weeks passed, the ghost ship did not slow. It cut across routes, drifting with intent, guided by a purpose unseen. Every system it passed through felt its weight. Civilizations halted wars and trade to watch. The silence was worse than fire. The galaxy waited for something to happen, and in that waiting, fear grew into obsession. Some called it a weapon. Some called it a messenger. Others whispered it was a warning that humanity had never truly died, that they had been watching from the dark. When the ghost ship finally crossed into the coreward sectors, panic turned into desperation. The council met again, voices rising until they echoed like storms. No decision was made because no one had the courage to be the first. To strike it meant war with something they could not understand. To leave it meant waiting for whatever came next. And so, the galaxy chose fear over action, waiting as the ghost ship drew closer to the center of everything. In that silence, in that waiting, every species felt the same chill. Humanity had been gone for 20,000 years. Now a shadow of their power drifted across the stars, unbroken by time, unbound by death. And the galaxy could do nothing but watch as the past returned to claim the present. The ghost ship moved with silence that was heavier than thunder. In the vacuum of space no sound could carry, yet its presence seemed to echo in the hearts of every commander, every citizen, every ruler. It drifted without deviation, ignoring war fleets, skipping through sectors as if the universe itself opened the way before it. And wherever it passed, fear took root like a shadow that no light could chase away. The younger races suffered the most. They had never known humanity as anything more than a word in forgotten scrolls. And now they saw a ship that belonged to that lost species. They did not see technology. They saw death. Rumors grew like fire among dry leaves. Some said the ship consumed energy from stars themselves. Others swore it carried a crew of human revenants whose faces were pale and eyeless. On small colonies, families abandoned homes overnight, leaving streets silent and empty, because they believed the ghost ship might turn its gaze on them next. Military fleets across the spiral arm shifted their formations. Admirals who once fought each other now shared uneasy messages, exchanging sightings and fragments of data. But none of that data gave them answers. Each scan returned errors, each attempted communication ended with silence. When warships attempted to surround it, their systems faltered and died as the vessel slid by. Entire flotillas drifted powerless until it passed. When power returned, fear replaced relief. The ship had not fired. It had not even acknowledged them. That indifference cut deeper than any weapon. To be ignored was worse than to be attacked. The council chamber became a battlefield of voices. Leaders of 38 species shouted and cursed across a wide ring of light. They argued not only with words but with the fear that pressed into their veins. One delegate screamed for its destruction, claiming that if humanity had returned, it was to finish what they started long ago. Another begged restraint, terrified that to fire upon the ghost ship would bring destruction not only to fleets but to entire worlds. Every word carried desperation, because no one could predict the meaning of its silence. Outside that chamber, the galaxy fractured. Pirates refused to raid near its path, fearing a curse. Merchants altered centuries-old trade routes. Armies abandoned sieges because even the thought of the ship's approach made soldiers restless and unwilling to fight. The balance of power that had been stable for generations began to tilt, not because the ghost ship demanded it, but because fear itself demanded it. The silence of humanity was louder than the shouting of all others. In dark halls of forgotten archives, scholars dug deeper. They unearthed brittle records, fragments of testimony from eras when humanity still walked the stars. They found descriptions of humans who refused to bow, who fought against impossible odds, who treated death not as an ending but as a weapon. They read of fleets that moved like storms and of soldiers who stood against armies 10 times their number. These stories had once been dismissed as myth, but now every word carried weight. If the ghost ship was a survivor from that age, then the galaxy was staring into the eyes of something it could never equal. The ghost ship did not travel without pattern. Though it seemed to drift, those who tracked it began to notice that its path curved slowly toward the coreward sectors, where the greatest civilizations lived and ruled. That realization spread dread. It was not random. It was deliberate. And if it was deliberate, then it was only a matter of time before the ship reached the very heart of galactic power. No defense seemed enough. No alliance seemed strong enough. The fear grew heavier until it was more than fear. It was certainty. Something was coming and nothing could stop it. Among the common people, new cults began to form. They worshipped the ghost ship as a messenger of old gods, believing humanity had ascended to a higher state and now returned to judge those who had forgotten them. They sang to the void, hoping the ship would spare their worlds. Others, in secret, plotted desperate plans to escape the galaxy altogether, building arc ships to flee into the intergalactic dark. Even if those ships never launched, the fact that such ideas were spoken aloud showed how deep the fear had sunk. In one border system, a commander finally broke under the pressure. His fleet fired upon the ghost ship, launching volleys of plasma and missiles that filled space with deadly light. The weapons struck, but they vanished as though swallowed by air. Not a single mark touched the vessel's surface. The commander's ships lost power instantly, their reactors silenced, their weapons frozen. And when the ghost ship passed, leaving them helpless in its wake, the commander took his own life, unable to face the shame of having stood before a ghost and achieved nothing. That story spread faster than the speed of light. To strike the ghost ship was useless. To stand before it was hopeless. To follow it was madness. And yet every fleet, every species, and every leader watched its path with eyes full of dread. They could not stop it, but they could not ignore it. The fear became more than survival, it became obsession. Every council meeting, every market trade, every war plan bent under its shadow. The ghost ship remained silent. No voice spoke from within. No beacon flashed from its hull. Yet its silence screamed across the stars. And in that silence, the galaxy began to realize a truth more frightening than war. Humanity was not forgotten. Humanity was waiting. The ghost ship had already passed through dozens of systems, and with every crossing, the fear of its presence deepened. No fleet could stop it, no world could resist it, and no technology could explain it. Yet while the younger races trembled, the scholars of the older civilizations worked in silence. They knew fragments of truth, and those fragments were more dangerous than ignorance. In hidden archives, sealed under centuries of dust, lay records of humanity's final days. Now those records were unsealed, and their secrets spilled into the galaxy like a poison. The first discovery was not of weapons, but of will. Humanity's last known war had been against an enemy no one could identify by name anymore. The records only described them as overwhelming, a force that had cornered humans across the spiral arm. Yet instead of surrender, humanity fought with a ferocity that defied numbers. They burned fleets just to buy a single day. They destroyed whole systems to deny ground to their enemy. And when victory became impossible, the record said humanity chose silence over defeat. Some claimed they retreated into the void. Others whispered they ascended into something beyond flesh. What frightened the scholars most was that there was no record of defeat. Humanity had not died. They had simply vanished. Now, the ghost ship stood as proof that those whispers had not been lies. Its silence was not the silence of death, but of waiting. Its hull carried scars older than empires. Yet beneath the broken metal burned a power that bent the laws of physics. Fleets that scanned it reported the impossible. Energy readings greater than suns, space bending around its mass like a wound in reality, weapons that did not exist in any archive. When the ship passed, engines flickered out, shields failed, and entire battle groups froze helpless. No attack touched it, no resistance slowed it. Across the galaxy, theories grew wild. Some claimed the ship was not crewed at all, that it carried the digital echoes of every human who had ever lived, preserved within its core. Others said it was crewed by humans who had long abandoned bodies. Their minds merged with machines until they became something new, something undying. A darker whisper suggested that it carried not humans, but something humanity had created, a weapon bound in silence until the time to awaken arrived. The whispers multiplied, each one stranger, each one heavier, and none could be disproved. In the halls of the council, fear turned to desperation. Delegates demanded answers from the older species, accusing them of hiding truths. Some protested innocence, but others stayed quiet, too quiet. There were those who knew more than they had admitted, who had lived long enough to remember humans not as myth but as reality. Their silence was as telling as the ghost ship's own. It was a silence of guilt, of choices made long ago, choices that perhaps had led to humanity's disappearance. But no one dared to speak it aloud. The truth, if revealed, might destroy them faster than the ship itself. Ordinary people across the stars began to dream of the ghost ship. Entire colonies reported visions of standing aboard its silent corridors, of hearing footsteps echo in halls lit by faint blue light. Some woke screaming, claiming they had seen human faces watching them from within the metal. Others described hearing a voice whispering promises of return. The strange part was that these dreams did not belong to a single species. They spread across dozens of worlds, carried in the minds of billions who had never met. The ship was not only seen, but felt. One scholar, breaking his oath of silence, stood before the council and declared what many already feared. He spoke of humanity's last creation, something whispered in ancient texts, the Ark of Silence. It was not a weapon but a vault, a vessel that carried everything humanity had been, waiting for the day the galaxy forgot its fear. If the ghost ship was that ark, then its purpose was not to destroy but to remind, and reminders could be more dangerous than weapons. Even as this revelation spread, the ghost ship revealed more of itself. For the first time, its hull shifted, plates of metal folded like the petals of a flower opening in the dark. Hidden beneath were structures that no eye could fully understand. Some looked like weapons, others like monuments. Entire fleets watching the broadcast recoiled as if the ship itself had awakened from a long slumber. Lights burned brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Across thousands of comm networks, static gave way to whispers. The whispers were human but not alive, voices speaking in 1,000 languages, words that should have been long extinct, all murmuring the same message over and over again. We wait. We return. Panic shook the galaxy harder than before, for if humanity had preserved itself in this arc, then it meant their silence had not been an end but a preparation. Species who had believed themselves safe, who had ruled the stars in humanity's absence, now saw themselves as temporary caretakers in a galaxy that did not truly belong to them, and in that realization, dread became certainty. The ghost ship was not a relic. It was a key. A door was opening, and whatever lay beyond it was about to step back into the galaxy. The ship continued its path, unbroken, deliberate, and endless. And behind it, the galaxy no longer saw silence. It saw the shadow of humanity rising again. The galaxy had reached a breaking point. For too long, the ghost ship drifted unchallenged, moving with the same steady pace as though it followed a course written long before any current empire had even been born. Every system it entered trembled, every fleet shadowing its path held their fire, and every council meeting ended in screams rather than decisions. At last, the Council of Species chose action. It was not courage but desperation that drove them. They decided to send an envoy fleet, not to attack, but to beg for answers from something that might no longer even hear them. The fleet that approached was vast, a coalition of ships from dozens of worlds. They came armed but restrained, weapons armed yet turned aside. The ships surrounded the ghost ship at the edge of a cold star system, forming a circle of light around the massive dark hull. They hailed it with every signal known, every frequency, every code, even human languages long dead. For a time there was only silence. Then the silence began to breathe. The ships reported strange failures. Engines hummed and then fell quiet, not shutting down but losing their rhythm as though the very laws of physics had bent. Shields flickered, displays filled with symbols that no one could understand. Then the voices began. At first they were whispers, faint sounds threading into the minds of every crew member. It was not heard with ears but felt inside the skull, like memory rather than sound. Each alien species heard the same words but in their own tongue, a human voice speaking without breath. It said only a few sentences, but they chilled the stars. We waited. We endured. We remember betrayal. The fleets froze. No one fired, no one moved. The ghost ship's hull shifted again, opening its metal plates as it had once before. This time there was no mistaking what lay beneath. Massive structures unfolded like the limbs of a creature stretching after a long slumber. Weapons that no archive recognized revealed themselves, glowing with energy that should have been impossible. They were not pointed at any single ship. They aimed everywhere, at everything, as if the ghost ship could end the sky itself if it chose. The council's envoy tried to answer. A dozen voices called out across comms, begging for dialogue, offering peace, swearing loyalty if needed. Their words dissolved into static. The ghost ship did not respond in language but in images. Across every ship's screen, across every crew member's mind, visions burned. Planets turning to ash, stars collapsing in seconds, fleets of alien warships shattered by human vessels smaller but faster, more brutal. And among these visions were the faces of humans, countless, unbroken, standing in the fire with eyes that carried both rage and sorrow. The visions were not just history. They were memory. Some collapsed under the weight of it. Crews screamed, tore at their helmets, begged for the voices to stop. Others fell silent, trembling in fear. A few whispered prayers, convinced they had seen gods. The fleet's admirals, broken by the wave of memory, ordered retreat. But retreat was impossible. Space itself bent around the ghost ship. Engines would not start, navigation failed, and wormholes collapsed before they could open. The fleet was trapped. Then the voice came again, louder, unified. You feared our silence. You feared our return. You were right to fear. In that instant, the ghost ship came alive. Its surface glowed, the scars of ages blazing with light. Entire fleets prepared for death, but no fire came. Instead, the ship released a wave, invisible yet unstoppable. Every ship in the envoy fleet shuddered as systems failed. Weapons fell dark, shields died, lights dimmed. Yet not a single vessel was destroyed. The ghost ship had shown its power, and in showing it had proven its point. It could have annihilated them. It chose not to. That choice was worse than destruction. The envoy fleet drifted helpless, silent, powerless, while the ghost ship continued its course, ignoring them as it ignored everything else. When at last their systems flickered back to life, the fleets pulled away, broken not by battle but by fear. They had stood before the shadow of humanity and learned that resistance was meaningless. The news of the confrontation spread faster than light. Every world, every colony, every soldier heard what had happened. The ghost ship had spoken, and what it said was not peace but judgment. Humanity remembered betrayal. Humanity endured. Humanity was returning. No one could answer what betrayal meant, who had betrayed them or when. But every species wondered if the betrayal was theirs. Guilt burned where knowledge failed, and in that guilt unity collapsed, alliances broke. Empires accused each other of ancient crimes. The council splintered as worlds prepared for war not against the ghost ship, but against each other, desperate to prove they were not the enemy humanity sought. Trade collapsed, borders closed, and chaos spread across the spiral arms. The ghost ship did not need to fire a single shot to shatter the galaxy. Its silence had done the work. Its whispers finished it. The ship continued its path, moving now with greater speed as though the time of waiting was ending. Its course aimed directly for the core, the center of power and civilization. The message was clear without words. Humanity had chosen its destination, and nothing in the galaxy would keep it from reaching the heart. In the dark that followed, one truth remained unshaken. The ghost ship had awakened, and with it, the galaxy had learned fear that would never fade. The ghost ship pressed onward, and the galaxy trembled as if every star could feel its weight. It had spoken without words, shown memories that burned into the minds of every witness and left entire fleets drifting powerless. Yet even then, no one could understand its true purpose. The question spread like fire across the civilizations. Was it a weapon, a tomb, a messenger, or something far worse? Scholars argued in hidden chambers. Leaders accused one another in broken councils, and common people whispered prayers in the dark. The silence of the ship was louder than any voice, and it pulled the galaxy toward a single truth no one wanted to face. When the ship neared the coreward sectors, fear turned into hysteria. These systems were the heart of trade, politics, and war, the place where the greatest powers believed themselves untouchable. Yet even here the sight of the ghost ship tore down their certainty. Fleets gathered in vast numbers, the largest armadas in living memory, but none dared to open fire. They remembered what had happened to the envoy fleet. They remembered how the ghost ship had shown it could break them without lifting a weapon. To resist would be suicide. To surrender meant admitting the galaxy no longer belonged to them. The oldest archives were opened at last, secrets sealed for 20 millennia forced into the light. Within them was a name the younger races had never known, the Covenant of Silence. It had been an agreement forged in desperation during humanity's final war. The records revealed that humanity had not vanished willingly. They had been betrayed. Their allies, terrified of the humans' growing strength, had struck a bargain with their enemies. Together they sealed humanity's fate, forcing them into exile, erasing their memory from the records of every world. It was not humanity who had chosen silence, it was the galaxy that demanded it. And now the ghost ship had returned to break that silence forever. As this truth spread, guilt infected the oldest races, those who had signed the covenant and then hidden their crime. Some confessed, others denied, but all were afraid. For the ghost ship's whispers had said only one word clearly: betrayal. If humanity remembered, then their judgment would not be against a single empire, but against all who had stood by in silence. Every world, every species wondered if they too would be counted among the guilty. Then, as the ghost ship entered the core itself, it changed. Its hull shifted once more, not into weapons this time, but into symbols. Lights traced ancient human letters across its surface, glowing brighter than stars. Billions watched the broadcast, and though the languages were different, the meaning was the same. The letters formed words that carried across every translation system, every mind. We remember. We return. The message shattered what little order remained. Some worlds fell into panic. riots breaking out as citizens begged their leaders to surrender. Others declared holy war, claiming humanity had no right to return. Fleets fired on one another not out of strategy but out of fear. The galaxy tore itself apart without the ghost ship firing a single shot. Humanity's silence had been broken, and the echo of its return destroyed the fragile peace of 20 millennia. Yet the ghost ship did not strike. It did not unleash its impossible weapons or annihilate the fleets trembling before it. Instead, it opened. Panels peeled away to reveal a core that burned with light, a sphere of energy spinning with the weight of countless voices. For the first time, the ship allowed itself to be seen within. What the galaxy saw was not a crew but a monument. Inside the heart of the ship were preserved memories, billions of human minds encoded in crystal and light. Every laugh, every sorrow, every moment of the species that had once walked the stars was stored here, waiting. Humanity had not died. They had endured in silence, gathering their strength until the galaxy forgot them. The ghost ship was not a war machine. It was a key. The ship released one final wave, a signal stronger than any before. It carried across every channel, every world, every star system. It was not just sound but thought, pressing into every mind with clarity. The message was simple, undeniable, and eternal. We were betrayed. We endured. Now we returned to claim what was taken. And then, before any fleet could respond, before any council could beg for mercy, the ghost ship moved into the heart of a wormhole that had not existed a moment before. Space folded around it, swallowing its mass into a void deeper than darkness. In the blink of an eye, it was gone. No trace remained but the echo of its message. The galaxy fell into silence. No one knew where it had gone or when it would return, but the damage was already done. The truth had been revealed. Humanity had not perished but waited. The betrayal had not been forgotten but preserved. And the promise of return was no longer legend but destiny. Every ruler, every soldier, every child knew that from this moment onward, the galaxy no longer belonged to them alone. It belonged once more to humanity, and the shadow of their return would never leave the stars.